Absolutely. Laurie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me and joining this group. I think that what you bring to the table, Laurie, is going to be the catalyst for why this project was put together. And I can sit here and talk to individuals. I can kind of share my experience, but I don't have firsthand experience of being in the emergency department with my son during an overdose event. That is because I was never notified because he made sure, probably because of my role in the community anyway, that mom was the last person he wanted showing up. So what you're going to share with us is going to be so powerful. It's already been so powerful to me. So with that, please let me introduce Laurie MacDougall. Laurie is a podcast host and guest author. She's a certified family peer specialist and executive director of REST, a 501c3. And REST stands for, I love this, Laurie, your support group, resources, education, support together. When I'm looking for things as a mom and a family member, that just encompassed it all. I say it, I just want to rest. I just want to rest. Even if it's for an hour, I just want to rest. Laurie is a former math teacher. She resides in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and is extremely active in the recovery community. She currently devotes most of her energy to REST, a non-traditional educational group that offers land and online video meetings, access to training in the CRAFT method, and a crisis toolkit helping families create their own individualized crisis plan. Her work is guided by a desire to improve the community's response and end the stigma associated with substance use disorder. Personally, Laurie loves skiing and ice hockey. To up there in cold Massachusetts. It's even colder than Indiana.
It's snowing. It's actually snowing today.
Oh, we have sun. Yes. You today. When Laurie is not devoting all of her time to rest or allies in recovery, or her podcast coming up for air, which is super phenomenal. I've listened to every podcast episode. Please tune into those podcasts. I've learned so much, both as a healthcare provider and a mom and somebody dealing with this as well. The only thing I could say is, Laurie, I want a podcast every day. Definitely read her articles on her blog and listen to that podcast coming up for air where she co-hosts. Laurie, with that, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deanna, for introducing me. I don't know how, I hope I don't disappoint with that introduction. And thanks to everyone to being here with me today and allowing me come to share my story. First thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I can share my screen if I have that ability to share my screen. I do. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with everybody because I actually do this within the community where I do a lot of my work. I work with first responders, emergency room staff, and I work on, I have a presentation, believe it or not, all put together. So I figured I would just utilize that presentation today to kind of discuss everything that, why did that happen? That didn't work. Let's see. Come on. There we go. Okay. So first thing I want to do, and I'm hoping to get people to really kind of participate in this. So first thing I want to talk about is something that I do with a lot of people in groups. Of course, I can't do that with you right now because we're in a virtual meeting, but this is something that I do when I'm face-to-face. And in fact, in February, I'm going to be working with some first responders, and we're going to be face-to-face. And so typically what I'll do is I'll bring in, especially just before lunchtime, can anybody guess why I would bring in Doritos and Munchkins just before lunchtime?
Because I'm hungry and those look super yummy right about now, and I want
Yep,
carbs.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what I do is I definitely give a salty and I give a sweet, and I give people an option because some people prefer salty, some people prefer sweet. And I give an option, and I put a small napkin in front of them, and I give them one Dorito or one Munchkin. And I tell them they cannot eat it. Do not eat it. And I go around and I hand them all out and I put them in front of everybody. And then I put the big bag in the middle of the table and the Munchkins in the middle of the table. And I tell them that they can't eat the Dorito or the Munchkin. And then what I do is I go through and I do another activity with them. And then I come back and I ask them, what would it be like to eat that Dorito or that Munchkin that's been sitting in front of you for this period of time? Can anybody kind of give me a response that you think might, like what kind of a description people are going to give me when I talk about the Doritos and the Munchkins and eating those things? And they're only allowed one.
It'll make me crave more.
And yeah, right? What's going on in your head, Becky, when you're looking at the Dorito and the Munchkin and you're really hungry and it's something that you love to eat? What are you thinking about? Are you able to focus on your work? Are you able to,
Totally distracted by it.
Yeah, totally distracted by it. And all you can think of typically is that Dorito or that Munchkin and how incredible it's going to taste. And then I let them eat it. I let them eat the one Dorito and I ask them to describe to me, how was it eating that Dorito or that Munchkin? And I get all sorts of, oh my God, it's so good. It's delicious. It's delicious. And then I hand out all of the Doritos and Munchkins and say, have at it. Eat what you want. And then I come back later and I say, okay, how was it? I'm going to hand out one Dorito and one Munchkin to everybody. What would it be like right now to eat that Munchkin and that Dorito? Is it the same as the very first Dorito and the very first Munchkin that I gave you today? No, typically not, right? We've satiated. They're filled, right? They don't crave that Dorito or that Munchkin anymore, right? They're kind of full, and maybe they're kind of looking for something else, right? That craving for the Dorito or the Munchkin or having it right in front of you, right? That is very similar. In fact, it's the same effect as the craving for a substance. Only the craving for a substance is 100 times worse, right? The craving is just like wanting that, that chocolate cake that's sitting on your counter, but you're dieting now and you don't want to touch it. So you run around the house cleaning and distracting yourself, walking the dog. But by 12 o'clock, all you want to do is eat that chocolate cake, and you eat it. You don't throw it out, right? You don't throw it out. You eat it so that you don't have that chocolate cake in your house anymore, right? Okay. So why is the craving, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but why is the craving, why is it so strong? Well, there are neurological, biological reasons why, because substance use disorder affects primarily the prefrontal cortex, which is that front part, if you put your hand on your head, that's the logical part of your brain. This is the part of your brain that you use to make decisions. So you know what, I need to write a note. So I'm going to pick up the pen and I'm going to write a note. That's an example of a function of that prefrontal cortex, but it also affects way back here at the base of your brain, the amygdala and the hippocampus. And the amygdala and the hippocampus, I'm sure most of you already know that, are in charge of fight or flight, in charge of, it's that very primal part of your brain. And it's the brain that, it's the part of your brain that also includes emotional long-term learning. And what do I mean by emotional long? Does everybody know what emotional long-term learning is? Right? That's where, like, if I'm sitting in the car and, you know, an old song from when I'm in high school comes on and I'm like, oh yeah, man, I remember sitting in the car with my girlfriend heading to the beach, right? Woo, right? That's emotional long-term learning. I now have a connection to the song. I feel something when it comes on. So those are the parts of the brain that's being affected with substance use disorder. So I just want to take a moment and I want to ask everybody to do something for me. I want you to go ahead and I want you to take in a deep breath and I want you to hold your breath. So what you're doing now by taking that deep breath and by holding that deep breath is actually you're using your prefrontal cortex. Maybe you're not holding your breath. That's still your prefrontal cortex because you're making the decision to either hold your breath or not hold your breath based on my request. So that's your prefrontal cortex making that decision. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to continue to hold your breath. Just hold it, hold it, hold it. And I want you to hold it for 5 minutes. I don't want you to let go of your breath. I want you to hold it for 5 minutes. Go ahead, I'll time it. Okay. Ooh. Okay. I'm seeing David look at me like, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I'm going to use my prefrontal cortex and I'm not going to hold my breath right now. Deanna's eyes got really big and wide, like, yeah, 5 minutes. Becky's now laughing. So my assumption is pretty much nobody is holding their breath anymore. What would happen if you tried to hold your breath for 5 minutes?
I'm going to pass out eventually, and then my brain's going to kick in and say, we're going to start breathing again.
Yeah, and why did you look at me like I was crazy to ask you to hold your breath for 5 minutes?
Because it's not possible.
Well, you know, you might try, but what happens is that amygdala and that hippocampus starts signaling to your brain, you will die if you do not breathe. Start breathing. I don't care what the prefrontal cortex is telling you, start breathing. This is the exact pathway in your brain that's being affected by all these different substances that people are taking. It's the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus and amygdala, and this is why the drive is so intense. Questions on any of that?
That was a perfect analogy. Perfect. Made me completely think differently.
And it's also, remember, like, just think about holding your breath for 5 minutes. You really do start to panic, right? If someone was to hold you under the pool, you know, you're swimming in the pool and they were, you know, going to hold you under that pool, under the water for any length of time. I'm sorry, I'm fixing the volume, but for any length of time, you're going to panic and freak out, right? Well, that's exactly what a person who is craving a substance and can't get their hands on it, that's exactly the part of the brain that's being affected, which is why when you hear somebody who's in withdrawal or someone who maybe they're in recovery and now will describe to you what withdrawal is all about, they'll say, I feel like I'm dying. I really believe that I'm going to die. And that's what it is. It's the amygdala and hippocampus are kind of signaling, oh, you're going to die. You need the drug. You need the drug. You need the drug. So that's why it's so intense. Okay, so let me ask you this. I'm hoping that people will throw this out. So unmute yourself. What is substance use disorder? What is it to you? What is substance use disorder?
My son.
Your son. Oh,
And I just labeled, guys. I just used that distortive thinking and labeled. But when I think of that, that's what comes to my mind.
what else? What is substance use disorder? I mean, I know that you must be hearing about it or seeing it a lot, especially if you're in a rural health clinic. And you had to have been seeing it for years because substances have been around. I mean, the opioid epidemic wasn't the start of substance use disorder. David? Hey guys, I'm a math teacher. I'm a former high school math teacher. I love long, uncomfortable pauses.
Well, let's see. I would say it's a pattern of behavior that causes a change in brain functioning, and then kind of a domino effect on the behavior of the person.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, well, let me ask you this. What is substance use disorder not? Now, I know there's 19 of you out there. So Allie, Elizabeth, Mr. or Miss Conrad, I don't know if it's a girl or a boy. What is substance use disorder not?
A moral failure.
Thank you. Thank you. It is not a moral failure. It is not, it's not a choice. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's not your son, Deanna. Thank you. It's not the individual. It's not the person. If you had substance use disorder, how easy would it be for you to stop?
It would be, it would be difficult. If we talked about this earlier, thinking that caffeine is a substance. It's a psychoactive substance, and you cold turkey quitting your coffee. Tell me how you feel and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Cranky. I'm like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, like, and all I can think about is I need caffeine. I've got a headache. I may vomit even. I'm just not going to feel well.
Right. Becky, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, I'm not so sure I could do it. Just like Deanna was talking about with the coffee, I am a coffee fanatic, and I'm not sure that I wouldn't give in on a regular basis.
Right. And often we do. We just don't recognize things, right? Often we do. I can tell you that, you know, that story of the chocolate cake, I think happens to a lot of people, right? Mine isn't chocolate cake. It might be a nice sweet pastry, right? But it happens to a lot of people. So why do we often, as a society, tell people with substance use disorder to just stop? Why do we do that? And how do you think it makes a person feel when they're going through this extreme struggle? And oftentimes there's a lot of other things. There's comorbidity happening. There's trauma that they've been experiencing. And we as a society go in and say, stop it, just stop. Becky, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say immediately I would feel defeated and desperate.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually even worse because there's a lot more things that we say and we do to people with substance use disorder that can be extremely defeating, and is kind of a great way to identify exactly why we're in the position as a country, really, because it's a countrywide problem with these levels of substance use disorder. Someone, hold on. What happened here? Someone said something in the chat box, and for some reason, oh, there it is. Yeah. D. Conrad said, we've been told that it's their fault, and so it's easier not to sympathize with them. Yes, it is. It is. And really, if it's not touching your life, right, directly, we often will just, well, it doesn't affect me, and we'll move on. And that's understandable, right? We've all got a lot of things going on in our lives. Although I have a funny feeling that you can knock on any door in the United States and there's some form of substance use disorder that the entire family is being affected by, maybe just not recognizing it or identifying it. So I included in here in the American Society of Addiction Medicine, their definition of what substance use disorder is. I do want to let you know that this is actually the short definition. If you go to ASAM's website and you look it up, there's pages and pages. And so basically addiction is just a primary chronic disease of brain reward motivation. And that's what we're talking about, right? Prefrontal cortex, amygdala, hippocampus, that reward system, memory and related circuitry. Dysfunction of these circuits lead to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. This is reflected in an individual pathologically pursuing reward and or relief of substance use and other behaviors. It is characterized by the inability to consistently abstain. And I know that Deanna started talking about medically assisted recovery and meds to help people recover from substance use disorder. And this is why, right? They have the inability to consistently abstain. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like the 90-day wall. The 90-day wall, 90 days. If a person can make it to 90 days and they can get beyond that, it's almost impossible. We hear it all the time that someone will, oh, they were doing so good. And then they got there 90 days and there was a relapse. Impairment in behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. Like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves cycles of relapse and remission without treatment or engagement in recovery activities. Addiction is progressive and can result in disability or premature death. And you guys working in a rural clinic, I'm sure that you are seeing a lot of the cycles of relapse. And that can put a lot of stress and anxiety and lead to burnout, vicarious trauma. So you guys taking care of yourself is a really important piece in all of this. We need you. Okay, who am I? As Deanna said, Laurie MacDougall, former high school math teacher. I am a mom of 3 children. I have 2 daughters. My oldest is, she's actually a lawyer, got her master's degree, and now works in Greece at a refugee camp as an immigration lawyer, making no money at all. So, so I don't know why all that schooling for that, but okay. I also have a daughter that is in, she works, I'm not exactly sure what she does, but I do know she's got a great job working for, in the business industry. I will also tell you a lot about my son that's coming up. I am the executive director of REST and the founder. So REST is not a traditional support group. I want to let everybody know that. It is about education, education, education. We provide support through education, and we use the Allies in Recovery website that Deanna was talking about for our curriculum. And we dive deep into craft, community reinforcement, and family training. And actually, I've been trained by the Bob Myers, the creator of craft. And it is one of the, in fact, I think it is the only evidence-based methodology out there for families that have a loved one with substance use disorder. I can tell you it is steeped in communication. Changing communication for families is a huge piece in helping direct and usher your loved one into a better life. I don't want to say recovery, because that may or may not happen. But I can tell you, it helps the family member to heal them on their own, themselves. It creates better and builds better relationships within the family. And it also has a really high success rate of getting your loved one to engage in treatment. And what I mean by that is it's their idea. The family member just supported it. It's not an intervention like a Johnson intervention, where we're going to sit down and confront. It's not like that, but it has like I think it's 74% success rate of getting your loved one engaged into treatment. I'm also, so just so you know, I lived in this community, Simsbury, Connecticut. And it's a really sleepy New England town, beautiful, beautiful place. I worked in a private school for a few years. I was the girls' hockey coach for the private school. I then worked in the public school. My husband is an engineer and he had his own engineering company. My son was working for him at the time. We also owned a local bagel shop. It's this very community-based bagel shop. I know it sounds crazy, but we took an old house, we redid the old house and turned it into a bagel shop. And everybody in the community, we had a beautiful garden out front, and people would come and order bagels and sit out in the garden and eat, or drop by and pick up bagels for those sports events. So the only reason why I'm telling you this is because I want you to know that we were really heavily embedded within our community. I would go to work at the bagel shop, and on a given day, tons of people would come in that I knew. At the time that I'm talking about right now, my son, he graduated from high school with honors. He went to a private school. He graduated with honors. He was an incredible athlete. He played hockey and lacrosse. He was being recruited to be a Division I lacrosse player. Things didn't work out well for his first year in school. So his father and I said, yeah, we're not paying for partying. So we want you to come home, and we want you to live at home, find a community college. And then after you get an associate's degree, we'll talk about a 2-year college. A 4-year college. So he had come home. He was going to a community college. He was working for my husband in the engineering company. And he was also, he was working out. He was playing on a community lacrosse team. He would go to the gym with my husband. They were lifting weights. My son was eating healthy. He was the epitome of health. He was using drugs, and I found him overdosed in his bed. It was not good. We had actually gone to a party for my husband's work. So it was me, my husband, and my son. It was a holiday party, and the next day, that was a Friday night, the next day I got up and I figured I would let my husband and son sleep in, and I would go and let the dog out. And when I let the dog out, I heard this unbelievable rumbling noise. It shook my whole house. And I was like, what was that? What the heck was that? I bring the dog in, I hear it again, shakes my whole house. And I thought, oh my God, my husband's having a heart attack. So I ran to the top of the stairs and I heard it again. And I realized it was not coming from my room. It was coming from my son's room. And I knew this is going to be bad. And so I did. I got down to his room, and it was not good. So long story short, we got him to the hospital. They gave him 4 doses of Narcan before he was revived. My husband and I were at the hospital with him for about 4 hours, and we had to spend a lot of time waking him up and telling him to take deep breaths. And but at the end of 4 hours, the nurse came in and said, "We're going to release him." And I thought, we still have to wake him up to get him to breathe. So I'm not exactly sure why we're doing this, but I knew a little trick. So I said, how do you know he didn't try and commit suicide? Have you brought psych down and done an evaluation on him? I want an evaluation done. And thank God I did, because they had to stop the release. And within 20 minutes, he was in heart failure, kidney failure, liver failure, and they had to put him on a life support. His lungs had whiteout, and they had to put him on a life support. And they came out no less than 4 times and told us he was not going to make it. So we were prepared to bury him. But because my son is the epitome of health, even the nurses kept saying, he's using heroin. He made it. He survived. It took a couple of days, but we had bought a home in Massachusetts, and we weren't going to sell our house in Connecticut right away, but I went home and packed up his room in my car the day that he got released, and I put him in the car and told him, "You'll never step foot in our home in Connecticut again." Well, just kind of moving from there. So what I want everybody to know is a couple of things. The first thing is it was an incredibly traumatic experience. And what ended up afterwards, what ended up happening was more about me. And I actually now understand when someone is talking about clinical depression, I know what that means. I also, I kind of put myself on the couch and I couldn't function. Luckily, I had left my job, oddly enough, the year before. I don't know why I had done that, but I put myself on the couch, and I remember saying to my husband, I promise at the end of 6 months, if I can't get up, I'll get professional help. And my husband was like, 6 months? You know, you're going to be on the couch for 6 months? And it was like, yes, I am. I'm sorry. And if you had taken the couch and put it on the driveway in the middle of the snow, I would have gone with it. I would have been fine with it. But for some reason, I must have some pretty high dopamine levels, because I can't stay down for that long. And it wasn't until I started doing a heck of a lot of research and kind of getting educated on the subject, and now it's become my life, right? Is trying to help other families through what I went through. There's a couple of things I want to share with you. That first experience that I had in that hospital wasn't too bad. That was in Connecticut. I don't know why, but that particular hospital was a relatively good hospital for us to go to. But my son did overdose multiple times afterwards. And I'll also let you know that him overdosing that first time was my introduction to the heroin epidemic, or the opioid epidemic. I had no idea that he was using heroin. And even now, come to find out, he was only using it for about 2 months. So it wasn't, it wasn't years and years of heroin use. It was 2 months of heroin use. He overdosed. That was our introduction. I literally was like, I thought heroin was gone, right? I had no idea. But my experience in Connecticut wasn't all that bad. But I did know that, oh man, we're talking about heroin. I'm in trouble, right? This is going to be a long haul. This is not going to be anything easy. And you may laugh at me, but I kind of took some solace in the fact that he was only snorting heroin and he wasn't injecting it. I know, totally ridiculous. Right, and eventually it led to injecting it, and I mean, I'll just share with you. Actually, he was living in a recovery home, and his roommate shot him up for the first time. So even recovery homes and treatment centers can be very non-safe places. But he did overdose multiple times after that. And actually I was with him, or not with him, but called pretty quickly afterwards. And I can tell you my experiences were not like Connecticut. So I'll just quickly share with you. There was one here in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. I met him at the hospital, and my son was not like, he wasn't belligerent or mean when he overdosed and we went to see him. He was very apologetic and crying and saying things like, you know, I don't know why I do this. I can't stop. I wish I could stop. I can't believe I put you and dad through this. But when I got to that hospital, it was one of the most horrific, demeaning experiences for not only my son, but for my husband and I as well. They wouldn't give him a room. And I don't know if that's the hospital's situation or the insurance, but they wouldn't give him a room. He threw up. They left him in his clothes with vomit all down the front of him. He wanted something to drink, and the nurse would not make eye contact with us. Like, if I wanted to get her attention, I was going to have to go over to her and turn her head and go, you know, where can I find water? She wouldn't make any eye contact. And then when he said, I'm thirsty, she said, well, if you weren't a junkie and you didn't shoot up heroin, you wouldn't be thirsty. And then, I mean, I can't even, it got worse from there. They moved him into this really busy section of the hallway. It was awful. And then at the end of our stay, when they were going to release him, now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't wait to get out of there, right? I felt like the disgust that the nurses had when they looked at my husband and I, and was, oh God, I can't tell you, while I was already experiencing a tremendous amount of pain because my son almost died. But then at the end, when they were going to release him, the nurse came over and said, do you want to go to treatment? And I couldn't contain myself. And I got in the middle and I said, no, he doesn't want to go to treatment. Just discharge him and let's get out of here. Because my thing was, I'll take care of it when we get home. Why would any of us, my husband, me, or my son, accept help from you? You've humiliated him, you've demeaned him, you have not treated him like a human being. And all I wanted to do was get out of there. So I can tell you that that's why I'm here, is really to share this experience. And there's more. I'll tell you one other time. He did overdose again. I was driving him home from a recovery home that he was in, that he relapsed. He relapsed in the car and he overdosed. He relapsed before he got in the car, but he was in the car and he started to overdose. I was I was in the countryside. I had to call an ambulance. I couldn't tell them where I was because I was in the middle of nowhere. And they came, they gave him Narcan, put him in the ambulance, and I met them at the hospital. One of the first responders from the ambulance got out, and we were standing there, and she was looking at my son, and she turned to me and she said, yeah, they just really got to want it. I know that doesn't sound like much to you. To me, I could have punched her in the face because it was such a hopeless message. if she had just changed her words and said something else to me, she knew steam was coming out of my ears, and she just excused herself and walked away. I don't think she knew how painful it was, and what I was going through and what I had just previously experienced. And I don't think she was aware of her words. So, now I may have been angry and upset back then because it was a very intense time. I think it's important that we get people educated, and we get people talking about the power of language. So this is why I'm here. And this is kind of what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about all of the messaging that is out there around substance use disorder. Now, I'm going to share with you some things that families hear constantly. I'm not even sharing with you the things that are being told and said to our loved ones with substance use disorder, because it is toe curling, it is mean, it is cruel, it is inhumane, it is unkind, and I don't see how it's helping anything. So just a couple of things. And I also want people to understand that a lot of this advice that we get as family members is very unsolicited. It's given at a time when we're incredibly vulnerable and we don't know where to turn and what to do. And it's often given by people that also have no idea what they're doing, and also would probably respond the exact same way that I have responded to my son. So at first glance, this first one, the power of language, I will do nothing ever again to help the addict. Just that statement alone is incredibly helpless, incredibly discouraging, because if I do, I have no hope of ever seeing my son. I love you, Joey, and it's because I love you that I am done. I think it's well-intended. I think whoever did this, it's well-intended. It's trying to send a message, but I think if it was reworded, it might bring a lot more hope in there. I can tell you, there is a Robert Ashford, I forget where he's out of, but Robert Ashford, he's in the forefront of the recovery field and research. And he's the only researcher that's done any kind of research on stigma surrounding the family. He's done a lot on people with substance use disorder, and he's done a little tiny bit on families. And can anybody guess what there's two words or phrase, well, two words that are used constantly with families with substance use disorder, and it is the most stigmatizing, and this is reported by families. Does anybody know what the two would be?
Would one be enabler?
Enabling. Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. What else, Deanna?
I said enabling. You're enabling.
Yep. Codependency. Stop diagnosing me. Codependency. I'm so sick of hearing you're codependent. How do you know? How do you know if I'm codependent? You don't know if I'm codependent. It's not helpful calling me codependent. Oftentimes, codependency is a response to trauma. It feels shameful. Codependency is unhealthy. So really, when someone calls me codependent, they're telling me I'm unhealthy. Are very sensitive to criticism. Well, I'm sensitive to being called codependent, so I must be codependent, right? It's kind of, I'm stuck in this trap if you start calling me codependent or an enabler. Enabling addiction. This is what I saw repeatedly early on when I was dealing with my son. You're enabling them when you give money when asked. Well, actually, that's true. It's also not true. I just want to put that out there. A lot of this stuff is true and it's not true. Paying for a car could be true. It might not be true. Paying for a phone. I never stopped paying for my son's phone ever, and I never will. And I was told I was enabling because I was paying for his phone. My son is in recovery now, and I paid for his phone. And in fact, I have a funny feeling I still do, but that's another issue. Paying for or providing a place to live. I did provide. My son went into recovery in my house. People are dying on the streets. They're dying in recovery centers, in recovery homes, and in homes. So that statement, and actually, if you know anything about the recovery community, and you may have heard some new words that are some new buzzwords that are popping up, like recovery capital, actually having a stable home and being supportive with the stable home, people have are more likely to be successful in their recovery. So that's not necessarily true, but also know that I'm not judging people that can't offer to have their loved ones stay with them. That's not the point. Bailing them. Yep.
Christina added in response to your question, your fault. And I think that I can hear that in just what you're describing.
Yep. Yep. And I tried, what I did was, these are some memes that we see. I have to tell you, online is one of the most brutal places to go and get support. It's awful. I would never, ever recommend someone join a support group on like Facebook. The advice, I can't even, it's not good. So, and also, helping people to understand the pain that the family is going through while this is happening. People don't know how crippling this illness is and how difficult it is to watch your loved one going through this struggle. And we are fully aware that we can't save them. We know that. I know I cannot save my son. I may try multiple times, but I know deep down that I cannot save him. Just like I know I can't save my loved one from cancer or from any other chronic illness that they might have. But I'm still going to try, right? Just like people still try to save their loved one from illnesses like cancer. So I just kind of put this out there, this is the pain and this is how deep it is, right? People, they're too exhausted to be any longer. The people they don't recognize inside themselves anymore. The people they grew out of, the people they never ended up growing into, right? I mean, it's just, it's devastating. I got this, believe it or not, I got this off of a Facebook page, a support group for family members. And which I also think this is a problem because it reaffirms the absolute deepest, darkest fears and the horribleness, and it doesn't help family members move to progress forward and actually supporting and helping their loved one. Okay. Did I do it? I feel like I'm missing. Sorry, that's my dogs. Oh, great. Let me just check one thing. Okay. No. Okay. Oh, the power of language. I want you to know, I went onto Facebook and I wanted to share this with you. This is coming out of a support group. This woman wrote in and she talks about her daughter, who's 16 years old. And she talks about all of these things, right? I highlighted, it's heroin. She's 16. She's struggling. She's setting boundaries down, or at least she thinks she is. She's blocked her from social media. She's told her she loves her. Dougie, stop. She's basically kicked her out of her life until she decides that she is going to get help, right? And she's asking others how they deal. And now people got on to that page and started giving her advice. And this is the advice. Stay strong. All addicts are liars. Well, that's not true. Addicts, yeah. People with substance use disorder tell lies. Everybody does. But they also tell the truth, right? When they say, I don't want to do this anymore, I believe them. I know they might go out and use, but that just tells me there's something else behind it. There's something driving them to go and use. Kick her out. She's 16 years old. Don't kick her out. She's 16, right? Don't kick her out. Find, we've got to find some other options maybe, but kicking her out at 16 years old. And I often feel like that's actually a horrible thing to be telling this mother. That's a piece of advice that no one should be telling somebody, because what if the mom does and then the absolute worst happens? What if the daughter dies? Whose responsibility is it now? Don't enable. What does that mean? I was codependent too. The family is toxic. I see this over and over again. So now we're telling mom, well, it's you and you guys. That's the reason why. There's nothing you can do. I will argue that one till my death. There's always something you can do. Always. May not be what you want to do, but there's always something you can do. Addicts are shit. She's a 16-year-old kid. She's a kid. And probably there's some major stuff going on behind the substance use disorder, which is why she's probably using to begin with. So that brings me to my ask today. What I'm asking of you guys, a couple of things. It's really cool because the cost is absolutely not a dime. It's not going to cost you anything, not one thing. Lost my cursor. It's really easy to do. Well, I should say it's easy to get started on it. Not always that easy to do, but with a little bit of practice, you should be okay. All I'm asking you to do is change the language around substance use disorder. That's it. That's it. When interacting with both the families and their loved one with SUD, let it include respectful language and just a small amount of compassion. At least make it neutral, right? At least make it neutral. So I'm just thinking if that nurse, when my son overdosed and the nurse called him a junkie and that, if she had not said anything and just looked at me and said, you know what, you could get him a glass of water over there, I wouldn't have been ripped through my heart. And my son might have been a little bit more open when she came to him at the end and said, hey, and she could say it with a little bit of compassion and caring. Hey, I see you're struggling with substance use disorder. I have an option you might want to consider. Have you ever thought of going into like detox? Because if you go into detox, they can give you some comfort meds and help you through that process. Is that something you would consider? And if he says no, okay, well, maybe another time. Here's some numbers. Here's some places where maybe you'll change your mind. No skin off her back, right? Maybe he'll be back. He might be. And I'm not disillusioned into thinking that if we change our language, our loved ones aren't going to overdose again. But maybe they'll overdose less. And maybe they won't feel so horrible because it's just think about this. This is something to think about. What if your mom or dad came to you and said to you, hey, I noticed some drug paraphernalia in your room. Are you using heroin? What would your answer be? No, no. So it's not surprising, right, that someone with substance use disorder will try and deny it. Also, I'm just thinking if that woman who was the first responder, if she had said something more to the effect of, hey, Mom, I see you're struggling. There are some resources out there for you too. Do you know of any? I don't have any, they have some over there. Maybe you want to go check those out, you know, whatever it was. But sending me this message, you know, he's got to really want it. Oh, right? You're killing me. Okay, so, and just to get started, just a couple of words or phrases, some things you might want to think about when you're interacting with people. What words would you want a first responder or a nurse, emergency room staff? What kind of language would you want them to use if your loved one was there and struggling with substance use disorder? And it's as simple as, instead of calling a person an addict, they're a person with substance use disorder or SUD. Instead of an addict, how about a patient? Instead of a junkie, an individual struggling with SUD. Just those words and phrases alone make a huge difference. Questions on any of this? Okay. One other thing, I'm not going to go through the rest of the slideshow. It's actually, this slideshow is designed, I'll just kind of let you look at glance at the slides. This slideshow is designed for first responders. And so we're also talking about secondary trauma and reducing burnout. And in this slideshow, as a resource, we talk to the guys and girls and women about creating a buddy system, right? Where they can partner up with one another, check in and see how they're doing, talk about their feelings and emotions, right? Really create a structure that's going to be very supportive, you know, make sure they're eating well, sleeping well, right? All of those things, what this whole buddy system that they're trying to create for these first responders in this particular group that I'm working with this coming in February, they lost 3 first responders to suicide last year. And so they're very worried about them and trying to provide support. Isn't that exactly what we're kind of trying to do with people with substance use disorder? It's the same thing. We're trying to create a system where they feel comfortable enough that it's okay to come and talk to somebody. Probably not a buddy system like this, right? Certainly not, especially, you know, if you're in a rural clinic or if you're even a first responder. But at least if someone overdoses or if first responders are called in, they know they're not going to get judged. They know that people care about them. And it's building a bridge of connection where people will be more likely to actually reach out for help. So that's my story. That's my ask. And I am more than, I would love to take questions if anybody has questions or needs to talk about anything. Oh, you may want to know about my son. My son actually is 5 years in recovery. He just graduated from college in May. Yep, unfortunately, there's a pandemic going on, so he couldn't walk. He got married on last Friday via Zoom. He lives in Switzerland now. And he just got his acceptance into university in Switzerland to get his master's degree as of yesterday. And I don't take any credit at all for his recovery. That's all his doing. But what I do take credit for is creating an environment where he was more likely to be successful. And I give all the credit to that to CRAFT and Allies in Recovery. And if anybody wants, remember, I have online meetings. So I have people coming from all over the country to our meetings, and they can learn how to implement CRAFT in those meetings. So just letting you know.
Thank you so much, Laurie. And thank you for sharing about your son. It's, I don't even know how to describe that, in that it's so full of hope for me, who currently right now is in the middle of crisis with my own child. to just continue to hear those stories. They do recover. They do lead amazing, wonderful lives. And really pushing for that and getting others to see that. Like, yes, I know what you see before you right now, which is him in active addiction, and he's 95 pounds, and it's awful and it hurts, and he doesn't care who he hurts right now. But that's not his story.
And another thing to think about too is just some things to change with families. So instead of saying things like codependency and enabling, instead, and I'm going to appeal to kind of those social workers and licensed clinicians, come from a strengths-based point. Hey, I see you're struggling with your loved one. Would you like to learn how to set healthy, effective boundaries? Much more effective. Invite me in. But telling me I'm an enabler makes me feel guilty and horrible. And, you know, I do want to learn how to set healthy, where can I do that? Do you know where? Oh yeah. Have you heard of this website? It's called Allies in Recovery, right? Or we've got some great clinicians in this health center over here, or, right? So there's lots of ways. Come from that strength-based position. You know, when families come into rest, I tell them, I don't see enablers. What I see are families desperately searching for solutions. They just haven't found it yet.
And I think that was honestly one of the very first conversations when you and I talked. Was I kept saying, I've been looking for this for 15 years. Where has it been? And it's not here. And I need this. And I want to teach this to other people. We need this in Indiana. We need this in rural America, small town USA. I've been there on the other end. I've heard it all. And trust me, there isn't anything I haven't gone through in my brain, right, that says, oh yeah, I've done this and I've done this and I've done that, and take that blame and feel bad as it is. You know, I don't need somebody else reiterating how bad I already feel. I need somebody to help me. I just want somebody to see me and understand what I'm dealing with as well. I
hear, tell me what to do. I hear it all the time. Tell me what to do. What should I do? What do I do? And you learn the craft skills. You start practicing those. And I know it sounds crazy, but giving someone something to do is such a help, right? It helps that it's like, okay, now I have something to focus on versus pacing back and forth, calling police departments. You know, I have something that I can do that's going to give positive or process, you know, progress me in a more positive direction. It's not easy, but.
Or not staying up all night catastrophizing exactly. That I have no idea that that's really going on, but I've catastrophized it to the 10th degree.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I can't honestly recommend Laurie, Allies in Recovery, coming up for air, the craft methodology, all of it. It has truly been a breath of fresh air in my life, and I'm continuing on this journey and continuing to learn as well. Does anybody have any questions for Laurie before we kind of wrap up everything in general?
Everybody's well, I don't know what time it is. Oh, it is, you're on East Coast time, right? Yeah, everybody's probably ready for lunch. I showed them Doritos and Munchkins at the beginning of the presentation, so.
I know. I'm like, oh, I could go for some Doritos. Thank you again so much, Laurie, for talking to our group. If anything comes up, I'll definitely forward it your way. And you and I will keep in touch, obviously.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
And as we kind of come to the conclusion and wrap that up, Laurie did a great intro segment to what I want to share with you. Throughout this whole 4 hours, I've talked to you both as a nurse and a healthcare provider. And I've led you a little bit to my personal journey. And what I want to give you the background on and really wanted to end my presentation with this is understanding why I wanted you to hear this, why I chose to help in any manner that I could get changes around language and whatever that may look like, and really help this vulnerable population group is my own personal journey with my son. My son is 26 years old. I have a 28-year-old, a 26-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 4-year-old. I have 2 grandbabies, 1 and 2, and 2 on the way. So my life is full and it's blessed. I am an ER nurse. I have spent 20 years in emergency services. I started at 18 years old in the fire department as a medic and a firefighter, and then went back to school, obtained my bachelor degree in nursing, and solely, really, truly did emergency nursing. In the midst of leading this life that is so full and so blessed, and pouring my heart into helping others in traumatic situations, I almost felt like I was living a double life, because personally, I was coming apart at the seams. I was in despair. I was devastated. My son was in the throes of active addiction, multiple overdoses, jail time, treatment centers in and out. In the past 2 years, I've totaled it up to where we've done 8 treatment centers in 2 years. And he's currently in the 10th one, 9th or 10th one. And my first thought when he goes into treatment is the very first time was, oh, I can breathe. I don't have to worry about him. He's in treatment. Like, this is great. And he's just going to recover, and he's going to come out, and he's going to be clean, and life is going to be happy, and it's going to be normal. And I felt this sense of relief and this sense of hope. What I found was a very dark, ugly underworld of treatment centers that are in the business for profit. I found human trafficking. I found patient brokering. I found body brokering. And the system, when I talk about a broken system, how because we've dehumanized this population so greatly, we've created a system of predators to prey upon them and victimize them, and we turn a blind eye and say it's okay. What have we become as a society, as healthcare providers, when we turn a blind eye to the injustices that are happening to this population group? So with that, I'm going to share something with you that I was vulnerable last week. This isn't several weeks ago, several years ago. This occurred last week. In the midst of me preparing this presentation for you guys, this is what occurred last week. To open your eyes and give you a teaser to what we're going to talk about in the next educational series on human trafficking and patient brokering and body brokering and what goes on in that world. And bear with me because I'm not as technologically savvy
Just remember to click your boxes at the bottom when you share.
Are you seeing my screen?
We are.
Yes.
Okay. And my boxes at the bottom.
When you share, you want to click your 2 boxes that say share sound and optimize for video.
Okay. And please stop me if you can't hear it.
I don't even know the words that I want to say right now. I don't know how I feel, what to think. What I know is I'm sitting in the Indianapolis airport saying goodbye to my son, who is going back down to West Palm Beach, Florida, to a treatment center again, to be caught up in body brokering, human trafficking, the shuffle, whatever name you want to give it. And as a mom and a person, I'm numb. There are no overwhelming feelings of sadness, hope, anticipation, joy, grief, peace. There's just numb. Numb to, was this really the last time I'll ever get to hug my child and hold him while he's still alive? Is this going to be the time that he gets it right and can finally get sober? What does the next few days, few months, weeks even really look like? What am I preparing myself for? Am I preparing myself for a joyous homecoming, or am I preparing myself for a funeral? Have I said everything that I possibly could say? Where are the tears? Where's the worry, the fear, the anxiety? I don't know right now. What I know is I'm numb, and I'm raw, and I'm tired.
Sorry. Looks like it's buffering. Oh no.
I don't even. Have I said everything that I possibly could say? Where are the tears? Where's the worry, the fear, the anxiety? I don't know right now. What I know is I'm numb, and I'm raw, and I'm tired. And I have done absolutely everything within my power to help my son be sober, get sober, kick his addiction. I've screamed, I've yelled, I've cried, I've cussed, I've begged, I've pleaded, I've manipulated, I've put myself in horrible, dangerous situations. I have prayed, I've cried, I've sunk into the blackened hole of desperation and despair. I've sought religion, I've sought spirit guides, I've sought mediums, I've sought spells of protection, I've sought out stones, you name it, I've done it. I've given money, I've not given money, I've given love and empathy and compassion and understanding, I've disengaged, there isn't anything I haven't tried. And what I know is that I have to be at peace. That I have loved my son with everything in me. I've sacrificed myself, the rest of my family, my money, jobs, to show my son how much he was loved, and I thought that all of the love I could pour into him would save him. And God willing, right now, I know I just have to be at peace. That I have done everything I can do, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing more in my power I can. And I hope, for his sake and for mine, that this truly is the start of a new journey for him. And that you will have help and happiness and sobriety and life, and he will be safe. And he will return home to me, whole, sober, alive, and healthy. Every moment you record because you want to be able to look back if that was your last moment and relive it over and over. This is the face of substance use disorder. This is the raw, non-filtered emotion of substance use disorder. This is my son being a victim of human trafficking and me not being able to do anything about it because he's an adult and I can't physically stop him. This is the face of a mom who has to come to terms with the fact that I may never get to hold my son again. And how do you prepare yourself for what the future may hold? I don't think you do. I've screamed and I've begged and I've pleaded other people for help. And it's just not there. I am the face addiction, and I don't get the benefit of the drug to numb me. And this is my reality. This is the reality for moms and
If I could say anything about that, I wasn't aware that that was going to occur last week. If you leave with anything, leave with that. I am the face of substance use disorder. And while I'm out here fighting for everybody else and my son as well, that's what I have going on in the background. Understand that and know that. What you saw today was a very professional, put together, on my game, giving information and speaking. And last Wednesday, that's what I was dealing with. That's how I felt. And last Wednesday, I had to check out to take care of me. And I think I'll share my screen one final time. So this is the point that we can talk about challenges and barriers as you go forward from what you've learned in this 4 hours. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. And trying to understand, did your personal perspectives on individuals dealing with substance use disorder change from the start of the presentation to the end of the presentation? What will you do differently in your own practice daily? What can you encourage your peers to do differently? What are your ideas on how to engage with individuals and what support can you offer? Are you supported by your peers, your organization, and C-suite executives? How many minutes really are you going to need to implement any change? What tools or support do you need to implement that change? And then that would be time. Becky, I'll hand everything back over to you guys to kind of finalize. I'm here for questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me at any point. Thank you so much for participating and listening and just letting me impart some of my own experiences and knowledge with you, and being willing to listen and allowing me to be vulnerable.
Well, thank you so much, Deanna. I mean, definitely the video, we have got to work to get this right and get care on the right path and fill in the gaps. So definitely the reason, we want to really work with everyone to make sure that all of the support for the patient and the family is there so that issues can be resolved and families can be healed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone should have on their calendar, we'll be covering human trafficking in our next session on February the 18th. And just want to open it up right now to kind of reflect on some of the questions that Deanna just shared. What are some of your next steps? What are you thinking? Did today's education meet your needs? And what are you wanting more of related to substance use disorder, education, and information? Elizabeth, anything you'd like to share?
Sorry, I was muted. Nope, we just thank everybody for their participation. And, you know, it sounds like some people want some more information about craft. So we'll work to get that out. I've seen that in the chat. And if there is anything that, you know, we want you to be able to take these videos back to your teams and engage more people. Again, it may be, you know, it doesn't matter what their title is. We care about their passion and want to involve as many people as possible. So if there are other people within your organization that you want to share these videos with, or that you want to meet with Becky and I when we come on site, please feel free to include others. The more the merrier. So, and thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks, Deanna. I will go ahead and end for today. I think it's been a really good session. I think we've covered a lot of good information, and it's just the beginning. So we'll keep plugging along. So everyone have a wonderful day. Have a safe day. And we'll be in touch between now and the 18th, but definitely join us again on the 18th. And feel free to invite others as we discuss human trafficking, which is another very tough subject, but one that we need to work on and we need to deal with because it is out there in all of our communities. Take care, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.